Yo, good day everybody, it's Landon here, and I'm here bringing you a video on how the Miami Heat went on that huge winning streak in the middle of the season, and why other teams should be scared of them. Thanks to Zemo Pierto Official for providing me with this full game highlight of the Cleveland Cavaliers versus Miami Heat. So let's get right into the video. So first off, we have to begin by saying that the streak that the Miami Heat went on in the beginning of the season, or middle of the season, was almost amazingly impossible. The roster isn't that good. Their best player is Hassan Whiteside, but he's not a very solid offensive producer and is mainly a defensive-minded player. They do have Goran Dragic, probably their best offensive player, but in the end, he's not much of a difference maker that would allow them to go on a 20-plus game streak. So sorry for my stuttering there. Dion Waiters is another solid offensive contributor, but once again, he's not the type of guy that would allow you to go on such a huge streak. Other players such as Luke Babbitt come to mind when you think of who contributed to that streak, but again, none of their players stick out as immediate people that could bring you to such a streak. So you have to think of what allowed them to win this many games. I have this theory, it's actually a fact pretty much, that any team can beat any other team on any given night. What I mean by that is, on any given night, if the Brooklyn Nets were just playing better than the Golden State Warriors, they could, in theory, beat them. And I think that's what Miami Heat did. I hate to say it, but there was a lot of luck involved. They beat a whole bunch of pretty good teams when they were on that streak, and I think that's just because of my theory. They played better than all the other teams on any given night. Dion Waiters is probably the player that stepped up the biggest in order to contribute to this, while Hassan Whiteside and Goran Dragic continued to contribute pretty much the same. So it makes you think, how many great teams did they beat? Well, they beat the Cavaliers, for instance, a team that would easily beat them normally. But once again, they were on this streak. They got hot, and they beat every team on every given night that they had to. They played in such a way that didn't allow the opponents to score much, and frankly, they just beat them. I mean, that seems obvious, but really, you have to think about it. They just beat them. There's no other way to think about it. So, who was the biggest contributor in them making the streak? You may immediately think towards Hassan Whiteside, being as he is the team's best player, but in the end, it doesn't come down to that. Okay, then it must be Goran Dragic? Not really. He was a great contributor, but he didn't really step up his game that much and continued playing pretty much as he always does. Dion Waiters? He's one of the biggest parts, but nope. It was the whole team. It was kind of a trick question there, but they just played in such unison. They didn't need one star player to step up, take the lead, and win. No, they were fine having everybody share the ball and score in some really crazy ways. So this video may seem a little abstract. After all, this did happen quite a while ago, and well, I mean, what's the purpose of this? Well, I think the purpose is if they make the playoffs, they can prove to be a real threat in taking down any team. Because as we've seen, the Miami Heat are great at beating any team on any given night, which is exactly why they can pose a huge threat in the playoffs. Say they're the 8th seed, and the Cleveland Cavaliers end up beating the Celtics for the 1st seed. Well, the Miami Heat can beat any team on any given night as they've shown for almost 20 games, so who's to say they couldn't beat the Cavaliers in a best-out-of-7 series? They could just pull off the same kind of magic they did before and take the W's. Of course, they wouldn't obviously win the championship or really go anything farther than the second round, simply because they wouldn't be able to pull off that magic 2 rounds in a row. But still, it's kind of crazy to think that if they pulled off that same type of thing again, they could, in theory, go to the NBA Finals. Now again, I'm not saying any of this is going to happen. I'm not even saying the Miami Heat are going to make the playoffs this year. But I am saying that if they did make the playoffs, and they're the 8th seed, they could pose a huge threat to whoever the number 1 seed is, no matter how many people count them out. That's why I don't think I'm ever going to count out the Miami Heat again, simply because of the fact that they can beat you on any given night. So there you guys go. That was my video on why the Miami Heat are real playoff threats, and why they were able to pull off that streak they made in the middle of the season. And when it comes down to it, the real reason is they have the ability to beat any team on any given night. That's something that Carmelo Anthony and Derrick Rose both said of the Knicks in the beginning of the season. Of course, we now know that's not true, but it is true of the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat should also be really excited about their future, as believe it or not, Hassan Whiteside has a lot of potential. A lot of people just rule him out as straightly a defensive player and nothing else. But if he pulls up on his offense, he could really become a superstar. I can see him as a future all-star, but many people don't see him as a future superstar. But I think if he can step up that offense, he can be. And since he's on such a long contract with the Miami Heat, hopefully he'll peak and just become that player while he's on the team. Maybe the Heat will have picked up some great players. Maybe Justice Winslow will have turned into an all-star caliber player. I don't know. Nobody really knows. But the one thing I am sure of is that if the Miami Heat make the playoffs this year, they'll be huge threats. Thanks for watching, guys. And once again, this video was